Okay, so we're gonna have a quick mini lesson about punctuation. So there are 5 things a sentence must have. Number one, I think you should know this by now. We've talked about it even when you're in kindergarten or first grade. Well, maybe first grade, second grade for sure. Every sentence must have a capital letter. So the first thing you can do is go through your work and just double check, does every sentence that you start with have a capital letter? Next, you can use this like a checklist. Does every sentence have a subject, a who or what the sentence is about? And number 3, oops, I have 2 periods here, so I'm going to delete one. Does it have a verb, what the subject is doing? Now, there are 2 different types of verbs, and Mrs. Ingle is kind of a dork. A long time ago, there was a song called Clumsy. You got me tripping, you got me flipping, you got me stumbling, okay? So that's how I came up with the 2 different types of verbs, okay? So, linking, am, are, is, was, were, will, become, seeming. And then you go into the lyrics. You got me tripping, stumbling, flipping, fumbling. Okay, so these ones, am, are, is, was, were, will, become, seeming, are what we call linking verb. They link the subject to the rest of the sentence. And then there's also an action verb. This is where, in addition to trip and stumbling, now if this was correct grammar, of course we wouldn't use this comma here. We would say tripping, stumbling. But I used this for the sake of remembering the 2 different types of verbs. So, if you look at that song, you've got me clumsy because I'm falling in love, so in love with you. When I check this, it has a capital letter. It has a subject. Now, this is tricky and this is a good sentence to start with because here it says I'm. All right. So I'm actually stands for I am. So the subject is I and the linking verb is am. In addition to that, your sentence should be a complete thought. So, what is she doing? She is falling in love. So that's a complete thought right there. I am falling in love. If it is not a complete thought, then that is called a fragment. So, warning, you need to be careful of words such as, since, because, for. For example, if I were to write a sentence that just said, since you have me falling in love with you, now let's say I ended a period here, if I were to come up to you and just say, since you have me falling in love with you, you would sit there and go, yeah, what? Okay, so that needs to be a complete thought. So one way to correct that could be something like, since you have me falling in love with you, my attention is turned toward only you. So now it's a complete thought. Also, I think you know it has to have a punctuation. So those are the 5 things a sentence has to have. Now let me do a quick note about commas and what I call fanboys. Now fanboys is a mnemonic device for a fancy word that's called coordinating conjunctions. And there was a video by Schoolhouse Rock a long time ago. Conjunction, junction, what's your function? Hooking up words and phrases and clauses. So the other thing that a fanboy does is it links 2 complete thoughts together. That's really what it does, a coordinating conjunction. When you have a sentence that has a subject, verb, verb, that does not get a comma. So you could say something like, I went to the store and bought cereal. So you didn't actually have 2 subjects in there, so there would be no comma. In fact, maybe I'll add that to my example here. I went to the store, oops, and bought, I'm just going to say bread, okay? And bought bread. Okay, so this would be your subject. What did you do? This is your linking, well, actually, it's kind of it's an action. So you went to the store, and then this is also another action. You bought. Okay? So when you have a subject, verb, verb, it does not get a comma between a fanboy. On the other hand, when you have a subject, verb, fanboy, subject, verb, then you use a comma. All right? And the comma always, I'm going to underline this one, there we go, goes before. Let's underline this one. It's also in capital letters just because it's annoying and gets you to remember it. So the comma always goes before the fanboy, the coordinating conjunction. So these are what the fanboys are: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So your example is, I am in love, comma, so I am clumsy. You can see we have two subjects and we have two linking verbs and two complete thoughts, so the comma goes in between those two. Now, another way that you could fix that sentence or do that sentence, so what I might say is something also correct. You don't have to have a comma there. You could say, I am in love, I am clumsy. Of course, now that's going on to a different line, which is going to bug me. So another way you could fix that is by putting a semicolon in between there and leaving out the fanboy. That's another option. All right. When a sentence starts with one of these types of words, as, since, because, for, first, second, later, etc., it will probably have that subject-verb combo. Place the comma in between the subject-verb, so just before that second sentence or second subject. For example, since you have me falling in love with you, so here is my first subject, and here is my second verb. There's my complete thought. Here is my second subject, so it's going to go right before that, okay? Another note, because doesn't or does not get a comma mid-sentence. So for example, I am clumsy because I am falling in love with you gets no comma, so leave your becauses alone. Last note of advice. Yes, make sure all sentences have a subject, a verb, also that complete thought. All right, let's do that too. And a complete thought, and I've been using that as, but I don't like that it went on to a second line, so let's just change the font size so it's all in one place. And I've been using that as orange. Okay. And watch out for something called assumed subjects, or what I like to call ghost use. All right, so I'm going to make these, I want this to be on one page. I'm kind of weird like that. So, all right, so these are called assumed subjects or ghost use. So here's what an assumed subject or ghost use is. Can a sentence be one word? The answer is yes, and here's the example. So the word is stop, all right? It has a capital letter. It has a punctuation. It has an action. The action is stop. Now, if I looked at you and I said stop, you don't think that I'm talking to or about anybody else. You just assume that I am talking to you. Okay, so this is what's called the assumed subject, or I like to call it the ghost you. It's not actually there. So it would actually just look like this. Okay, the you would not be there at all. You just assume that that you is there. So when you assume it, you have a subject, you have a verb, you have a capital letter. It is a complete stop or thought. You know exactly what to do. Stop. And it has a punctuation. So this is actually a complete sentence. All right. So just a quick recap. When you check your grammar today, make sure it has a capital letter. Make sure it has a subject. Make sure it has a verb, either linking or action. Careful for words like this, because those actually are the subject and verb within one word. Make sure that it is a complete thought. When you see sentences that start with things like since, make sure that that is also a complete thought, and you put that comma before that second subject. Make sure all sentences have a punctuation. Another good rule of thumb is, can you say the sentence in one breath? Or if you pause, that's probably also a good indicator where you need to put a period or a comma based on the rules that I shared with you. And does it have a fanboy. So again, if it has subject, verb, verb, you're good. It doesn't need a comma. But if you see these fanboys, then you know that you need to put a comma before every one of these. And we already kind of talked about when you start with one of these words, make sure there's a comma somewhere else just before your second subject. Leave your becauses alone. And I don't think you'll have a lot of assumed subjects, but it's there just in case you need it. All right, so I'm going to attach this to Google Classroom. You can use it as a checklist. These are the things that you should be checking today.